All right, welcome back to Top Tier Headshots. And today on this edition, we have got JB and the Doctor in the studio today. They are one of my earlier contacts for my business. Super thankful to have them as clients and to have built a relationship with them over the last couple of years. And super excited to have them in the studio today. Welcome, guys. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourselves?
Well, first of all, Dan, thanks for having us. Great to see you again. Love being asked to join you here for this conversation. You talked about gratitude. Really appreciative to know you, man. And super, super impressed by everything you've accomplished in such a short period of time. So kudos to you. Let's start there. My name's JB, Josh Blum. I am one half of JB and the Doctor. I like to say that my initials are the most important initials, but the Doctor over here would probably disagree.
I'm the tall, handsome one.
Which you can't see, but there's a reason we're laughing.
I wasn't laughing.
He's got me laughing. We've been in partnership together unofficially since October of 19, and we formally joined forces in June of 20. We just hit our 3-year anniversary, funny enough, and it's been a fun ride. We are JB and the Doctor. We offer 2-on-1 coaching to entrepreneurs and service-based professionals, but our business has certainly evolved, as has our verticals and our platform. So we now offer individual coaching. We offer corporate training on soft skills, and we recently launched a joint venture called Evolve and Thrive, where we offer peer advisory boards for business owners that are looking to eliminate isolation, help their decision making, and also eliminate some of the overload that they feel in their businesses on a day-to-day basis. So we've got a lot of moving pieces in the business today.
Yeah, absolutely. What are some things that maybe led you both to venture out into this entrepreneurial space?
So I'm the Dr. Andre Caruso, so because Josh didn't introduce me, I figured I'll do that for myself.
I did introduce you. You just didn't take the bait. You made a joke instead.
That's probably a better introduction for me. So my history goes way back. I was in the hospitality world for a good couple of decades. Don't do the math on my age because it's not fun. But it was at this point where I was tired of working for other people's businesses, growing them. So it was either open my own restaurant or go to school to become a psychologist, which is what I always wanted to do. I figured it was going to cost about the same amount. And worst case scenario, I could always default back to the restaurant business. So I ventured out, became a psychologist, and then as I had a therapy practice for quite a while, how do I merge these two things? How do I help more people? There's a lot of restrictions in the psychology world. A lot of things, once you're working with someone or know someone in the real world, you can no longer work with them in the therapy world. So I was like, how do I help business owners with their mindset, with their stress, things that don't involve necessarily traditional therapy, but the skills are still there. They're still valuable. So I started launching my own individual coaching. And then I met this guy, and we figured out ways to, trying to help people. He was, I figured, the biggest project, so I'd work with him first to help him. And then it just evolved from there to Evolve Performance and Development by JB and the Doctor.
There we go. There we go. And what about you, Josh?
I don't know if you know, I moved to Florida about 5.5 years ago, and so the journey to entrepreneurship kind of started after I moved here. But our story in particular, I feel like it's important to work through. When we met and we were really aware when we were talking with people and meeting with people that there was just some gaps in their skill set and in their knowledge. They just hadn't been trained. They didn't have the background that gave them kind of the mentorship or the guidance or even the lessons and the education on public speaking, on messaging, on communication, on the behavior and mindset and resiliency and so on and so forth. And so our platform really began because we saw a great need, and when we spoke with people, they shared that they had this need and they wanted to get better. And that was really for us the genesis and the origin story was, how do we help these business owners when we know A, B, and C? And Andre over here, Dr. Dre, was already on the path. And he just asked me if I wanted to be more involved and if I wanted to actually really take something and create it together. And it sounded like an absolutely phenomenal idea. It was a great way to be able to give back to the people I was already working alongside and I already considered friends and colleagues. Mm-hmm. And it's really evolved into something fantastic and I think greater and more robust than we ever imagined at the get-go.
Yeah, that's awesome. And it's been really cool to kind of, I know we haven't been connecting a ton over the last couple of years, but it's kind of been cool seeing you guys on LinkedIn and to watch that platform grow and to see the successes that you've been having. If you could boil it down to maybe just a few key things, what would you say are several key things that have led to the success that you're seeing today?
Relationships more than anything else.
Right.
We talk about soft skills all the time, and soft skills being people skills. And to us, nothing happens in a vacuum. Everything is through other people. You can't have success just on your own. It requires other people, whether they're your constituents, they're your clients, they're your partners, they're your vendors. It doesn't matter. You need that village around you. And so we've been really blessed with fantastic people that we've been able to meet and work alongside and develop relationships with. So from my perspective, number one is the relationships we built.
Yeah.
And to build off that, the relationship that we have with each other, we knew each other briefly before this happened, but we were in the same circle and we were in some groups together, and we'd hear some people's ideas and we look at each other just kind of funny, like, that's a terrible idea.
Right.
And this is how we would do it. And we both kind of always had the same idea of how we would do it. So I think the relationship we've built, we're polar opposites in a lot of ways, but our core values and our core strengths are the same. And we complement each other really well. So I think that's important in a partnership. Any kind of group that you have together, any kind of couple you have together, even in a business.
Yeah.
You have to have those core values the same, and then build off those strengths that you each together carry. So I think that's been helpful for us.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting, and I've seen you kind of talking about the soft skills, the people skills over the last couple of years, and I literally just this morning saw somebody in a photography coaching group say, was giving some advice to somebody who was like, I'm on my last legs, and how do I build this business in a successful way? And one of the pieces of advice given was, running a photography business is like 90% people skills. A lot of people think, well, it's the technical and the photography and the lighting and things, and it is, and there is a lot important in that. But if you don't have the people skills, or you're not growing in those people skills, you're not going to get the sales. You're not going to have the client experience there. You're not going to be networking with people and growing strategic partnerships and things like that. So that's really cool how you mentioned that. Anything else that comes to mind, kind of key things that have led to success?
Consistency.
Well, consistency is huge, and I'd even add to that. I from a macro perspective, people, especially with the shift heavily to virtual, people aren't as good with other people as they maybe were 20 or 30 years ago. So there's an entire generation where just the need for what we emphasize is becoming more and more apparent, and there's a bigger gap there than there was before. But you also touched on something, technical competency, being good at what you do in a business. That's table stakes. That gets you a seat at the table. It doesn't keep you at the table. If you want to stay at the table, or you want to grow that table, you really need to be able to connect with people on another level. And that takes a lot of intention. It doesn't happen by accident, generally. It comes from a lot of intention and consistent efforts.
So my favorite thing to say is, more than one thing is true at the same time. And it's generally the case. Most things aren't black and white.
Yeah.
Most things aren't one or the other. Most things are ands, like this and that. And as you were saying, with what you do, you have to be technically sound. Otherwise, you're not going to have good pictures. No one's going to come back. But you also have to have people skills, so people feel comfortable to want to come back and take pictures with you and recommend you to others, right? So those things don't stand alone. I think in everything that we do, nothing stands alone. And as JB was just mentioning about like venturing out into the world, we're seeing less and less that with COVID happening, and then people just being more tech savvy and the comfortability of staying home. You lose a lot of those skills, but you need both. Right? You need that idea to be comfortable, and I think we label each other a lot now, or the introvert-extrovert thing, which don't get me started on that. Totally not true. It's situational, right? So knowing how to put yourself in the right position and handle those situations well, I think is important.
Absolutely. So if I told you that I feel like a little bit of an introvert, and I feel more comfortable in small group one-on-one situations versus kind of like, big crowded room, lots of, networking group, lots of people there. I would tell you that, when I first started my business, I stepped out of my comfort zone to go do that because I knew that I needed to. I needed to get my name out there. It still didn't feel comfortable. So I don't know kind of how you might respond to that, or how you might encourage an entrepreneur who's like, I just feel like I'm in my shell and I've kind of had my sweet spot there, but it's a struggle for me to get out and network with people.
Mm-hmm. So when I say about the introvert extrovert thing, those are really just categories of how you're feeling at that moment, right? So it's not a label, and I think that's what it is. People say, I'm an introvert, so I can't go out, or I'm an extrovert, so I can't stay home.
Right.
When that's not the case, the case is situational. For you, it was situational also, right? Like you prefer to stay home in certain things, or you prefer smaller groups. So you find your strength and you dive into that strength. So you look for maybe events that have less people or more intimate, right? But you're not staying home and locking yourself in because you labeled yourself an introvert, right?
Right.
And then you can challenge yourself in certain areas, like, oh, let me see, I can go to a bigger group, or let me surround myself with people that I'm already comfortable with, so I still have my smaller group within inside that bigger group that I could fall back to. So it's just learning where your limitations are and where your strengths are, and playing to those, as opposed to labeling yourself and not doing anything because of it.
No, that's awesome. That's very cool. If you could rewind and start the business over again, is there anything that you would have done differently if you could do it over again?
Yeah, do we have to open our business in the middle of COVID again, or can we just change the timing of that?
Right.
The number one thing we did when we opened our business was we pivoted from what was our intentional business plan, which was corporate training, and we really went to emphasize building out an online business and building out courses. And we weren't playing to our strengths when we did that, which is okay, because it was an essential to shift our focus during that period of time. But we probably put too much energy and effort into that and didn't switch back as quickly as we should have. So if there's one thing I would do different, I think it's maybe just be a little bit quicker to say, okay, this isn't what we want to do, nor is it really where we're our sweet spot in regards to our comfort level and our expertise. So let's go do what we're great at.
Yeah.
And let's push through it.
It's funny how Dan and the doctor sound as a business type. No, I would never lose my partner, as far as he knows.
I have such confidence in that.
I think as JB said, right, like just learning how to pivot. I think it's also a strength that we learned a lot from that time. So I don't ever necessarily believe in regrets, or like, obviously there's some things you can do over you would, but what you do in that situation is just take and learn from it, right? So I think we've learned to make the pivots quicker as we went along, and to say if we thought something wasn't really the right direction, to change that quicker, and just be more intentional about a lot of that stuff. But that's part of the learning process and growing process too. You always wonder, would you learn to do that stuff if you didn't go through those other aspects of it?
Right.
So it's probably, again, back to an and, like both of those things make sense.
Yeah.
And how just to learn from both of them.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. Who would you say are the people in your life that have contributed to the success of your business? I mean, obviously you've got each other. That's kind of JB and the doctor doesn't work without both of you. But I guess I'm thinking primarily of other people in your lives, coaches, mentors, colleagues that you don't have to get specific with names, but just maybe types of people in your life that have pushed you to be successful in this.
I don't know that I'd call out somebody directly, but there's a lot of instances where you receive validation for the work that you do, or that the quality of the work that you do is well beyond sometimes what you see out there, where you see success ahead of you. So you have a lot of examples in life often where somebody's doing it, and they might not even be doing a great job, but they're out there doing it. And so especially when you're launching new, just knowing that, hey, if I have something of value that I can offer, a lot of times that value is greater than what's out there already, or I have the ability to make it so.
Right.
No different than the work that you do, right? Like, it's not that there haven't been photographers before you. You have a promise and integrity to really do above and beyond for your clientele, and we see it all the time. We literally see it in the work you do. It's a nice thing about what you do.
Yeah.
So for us, and for me in particular, it's not an individual, but it is those validating moments that I see. That really help me continue to push and grow within our business.
I would say, yeah, I don't think there's a person. I think it's a lot of people.
Yeah.
I really look for inspiration in a lot of others. I find I'm very attracted towards smart people. So if I hear smart people talking, I want to start listening.
Thank you.
And that's why you surround yourself with
kind.
them. And it's true. I'll give him a little compliment on that. I think JB is actually one of those people that I've looked to because his strengths are different than mine. So it's helped me in a lot of ways to develop some of those strengths, to use them more efficiently, and realize some of the importance in doing that. But like yourself too, looking to you and how you network. And we were just talking about that earlier, right? You're out there a lot, and everywhere I go, someone knows Dan. So it's nice you take things from that. You look at those things. And it doesn't always have to be just smart, but people that use the skills that they have efficiently. I always take something from that because we're all, again, different. We're all unique. And try to copy someone exactly is never going to work because you're different from that person.
Right.
But it's smart to take things from people. That's why I always tell people when they're reading like those self-help books, they're not gospels, they're tools. And you take the thing from that that makes sense to you and works for you. And I do that with people as well. Like when you see them and see what they're doing strong, and try to replicate.
Somebody that I follow on LinkedIn just this morning, it's amazing how much of what I'm saying is like stuff I just saw like today or yesterday. But this guy, he posted, his post was basically about, trying to grow your business, scale your business, see more success in your business. And one of the things he said was, take a look at people who are maybe 2, 3, 4 years ahead of you in the same industry who are absolutely crushing it, and reverse engineer their success. So it's not going to be identical. Again, you said, everybody's different. So there's going to be, your own spin on it, your own take on it, your own personal brand. But there's processes that those people are doing that are leading to success. So figure out what that is and then reverse engineer that and put it into practice for yourself. So.
Absolutely right. I mean, no one's reinventing the wheel here.
Right.
Everyone's just doing a version of something that's already been done.
Yeah.
It's just finding how that version works for you, like we were talking about with the introvert-extrovert thing. It's really just finding out how you best do whatever you do and taking the skills from others and implementing it in.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Have either of you at different times in your professional careers had a mentor or mentors, and how was it helpful to you?
I would say, I don't know if anything official or traditional. I've had in my field, we had a lot of supervisors that got you through different aspects. So there's always been people that are leaders in the field that I was in that I learned from. So I look at them as mentors of sort. And again, taking their strengths and learning, like, hey, this person does this really well. Let me, take that piece from that person and take it and put it into effect. But I kind of look at that with most people in my life that have importance. There's always some value there. So I don't know if it's a one specific mentor that I would say that I had consistently throughout, but there's been key people in my life that I've always looked to for either advice or insight. And I've also learned over time too, it's not always necessarily people closest to you that give you some of the best insight, because the people closest to you are jaded in what they're trying to do and have their own perception, which is also why therapy is very good, because it's someone that's not connected in that way. But I think that's how I've kind of had that mentorship throughout life.
That's an interesting question, Dan. I don't know that I've had a formal mentor-mentee relationship over the years. Worked with coaches, of course. Have had some exceptional role models in my life, including my father, who's a solopreneur. Certainly learned work ethic and some of the challenges with work-life balance when you live with that growing up. You also have your peers which aren't necessarily mentors, but you can take so much and gain so much from the people around you that are in similar positions or working through similar obstacles. If they're kind of, like you said earlier, they're within range of where you're at in your business. Personally for me, working alongside Andre here has been a really unique experience because I had 10 years of training experience, give or take, before we started working together. I've worked with professionals for over a decade, but I hadn't done a lot of individual coaching per se. So to be able to sit alongside and next to a doctor of psychology, cognitive behavioral therapist, expert in behavior modification and mindset, and really learn and listen and pay attention to how he approaches the conversation, how he addresses some of the internal conflicts that people deal with that are very universal and common through all of us, has been incredibly insightful for me. And so while it hasn't necessarily been a formal relationship where he's acting as a mentor, I have gained more experience in the last couple of years working alongside this guy than I think I could have ever gained from working with a mentor per se, because we've been live and active together in these client meetings, and it has made a world of a difference in my approach.
Yeah, that's fantastic. If you had somebody come to you and say, hey, I'm thinking about starting my own business, what are 3 things you would tell me to get me started on the right foot? I know that's pretty broad, pretty high level, but a lot of people in my network are kind of startup founders and brand new entrepreneurs and things like that. So I felt like it might be a helpful question to ask.
How well are you dealing with stress and having coping strategies in place ahead of time? Because you're going to face it, and it's not a good time to try to figure out what you do to relax and find balance, because you're going to need it. You're going to work a lot. Sleep's going to be different than you're used to. Stress level is going to be higher. And the biggest thing that I see derailing people is not having those strategies in place, and then that overwhelm happen, and then they go from 100 miles per hour to 0 miles per hour because they're burnt out. They crash really hard. Yeah. So just having some real good coping strategies, good ways to find balance, and good ways to deal with that stress ahead of time is probably number 1 for me.
That's awesome.
I'll give you 3 right off the bat, top of mind. Number 1, just go, start, take action. More people fall prey to paralysis than probably any other issue when they try to launch business. They just keep thinking about it instead of doing it. It's a major challenge for people. So that's number 1. Number 2, have the resources. You either need the time, the energy, or the money to do it. Ideally, you got all 3. Starting a business is going to be volatile. It's going to be challenging. It's not always going to play out the way you expect or want it to or plan for it to. And so having that additional energy, time, or money to launch is a really big deal. And number 3, have the support system. And I think that dovetails really nicely to what Andre was saying about having coping mechanisms and strategies in place and how to handle stress. But I think having that community around you, it's full circle from what we first started talking about. Relationships matter. So having either a supportive partner or supportive family, supportive friends, or joining a group of like-minded individuals that are going through something similar that you can vent to, that you can get advice from. That support system is going to see you through some of those moments where you really question, what the heck am I doing here?
Right. No, for sure. One of the things that I've talked to people about that kind of goes back to a little bit like the support system and things like that is the importance of having a good personal brand for yourself on a professional platform like LinkedIn. And that, even if you're an employee at a larger company, you can still build a brand for yourself within that company. And I've seen connections on LinkedIn who have either they were part of a big company, they went through a round of layoffs, they unfortunately were part of that, but because they had built such a good brand for themselves, they got snapped up in a heartbeat by another company that saw the value because they had taken the time to build that personal brand. Or on the other side, again, employee of a company, builds that personal brand for themselves, then goes out and starts something entrepreneur-wise, and now they have this built-in audience already that is interested in what they're doing because they've taken the time, people have gotten to know, like, and trust them, and then they've kind of got this, not safety net, but just this network of people that are interested in what they're doing. And I think it's valuable for anybody in any career situation.
Absolutely. I think that's another thing I would say to people that are starting out as entrepreneurs is give it a shot, but not everyone's supposed to be an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Right? There's supposed to be people that are employees that help everything go well, and there's nothing wrong with any of those things. It's finding what, again, works best for you. Take your shot, but also start to realize, hey, I'm much better in a employee capacity where I can actually make some big differences to some companies and become even more valuable than I can as an entrepreneur. A lot of people see that as failure. Again, I don't. I see that as just learning yourself best.
Yeah.
Every risk is worth it. It's just taking that data and using that information well, and learning that about yourself and realizing that it's okay to try different things, and then going back to the thing that you might be strongest at, and it might not be the thing you thought it was in the beginning.
Yep, absolutely. I have a connection that he wanted to try entrepreneurship, and he launched out on his own. 6-8 months in, he realized this is not for me. And now he's in a more corporate job, thriving and doing really well, growing in his career. And I'm like, great, that's you. You took the shot. It wasn't devastating. It was actually very revealing for you. And now you feel like you're in a place where you need to be and where you're thriving. So I think you're right.
And that goes to what you're saying about building your own personal brand. It doesn't have to be just for your own personal growth. It could be for the business growth.
Right.
You become more valuable to the company if you have a name attached to yourself that they're highlighting now. So there's more than one way to look at these things.
Yep.
It's not all, again, one size fits all. It's how it fits best for you.
Absolutely. Josh, anything you want to add to that last kind of LinkedIn networking point?
It feels like people are becoming a lot more aware of the importance of a personal brand. I think that's one of the adaptations we've seen in culture lately is, hey, I can be more than an employee, even if I am working for a corporation. There's aspects of entrepreneurship that I can and should likely be adopting. And I don't know if there's still a prevalence out there where people aren't doing that, or it really has become kind of a cultural shift here. But I think there's some real validity to making sure that going beyond what you're doing for an employer, you're doing for yourself. Because people switch jobs less than every 3 years now. If you're not getting promoted in a year and a half, 2 years, you're probably not getting promoted at all type of scenario,
Right.
more often than not. And so we owe it to ourselves to look beyond an employer if we are working for somebody. And even as an entrepreneur, there's always room to grow and develop your own personal brand. You might be a business, but for most of us, there's a goal sooner or later to not be the business, for the business to be able to exist without our direct interaction with it on a day-to-day basis. And so either way, there's a necessity there. That's only going to benefit people. So I agree with you, spot on. You need to have a brand. You need to be on these platforms. You need to pick at least one to be effective on. And that's going to put you in a much better position to really live a fulfilling life and be able to experience a lot of great things.
Yeah, absolutely. Probably my two biggest platforms are LinkedIn and Instagram. LinkedIn, in terms of my photography business, probably about 70 to 80% of my business is coming from LinkedIn. Like, it's just been wildly successful as a lead generation source, networking, all of those things. It's interesting because I've maybe got a client or two from Instagram, but most of the people that follow me on Instagram are actually other photographers. So I was just wanted to point that out as, you might have different focuses on different platforms where, one platform might be more of a, for your business, a lead generation source, a networking platform. And, for me, Instagram is turning into more of a potential for growing a coaching business for other photographers. So it's like different different focuses there and different strategies, but I think it's just trying to figure out, well, who's on the different platforms, where is this audience living and hanging out and networking, and where is this audience doing this, and how can I leverage those things to my best advantage.
Trial and error, a lot of it.
Right, exactly.
That's really what it's going to be, is trying things and seeing how they work out for you, and then making the pivot when you need to, as we talked about earlier. Knowing that you don't stay in something too long, but giving things opportunity.
Yeah.
And just don't try it like, oh, it didn't work. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. That's all the questions that I had. I didn't know if there was anything that you guys wanted to talk about while you were here, or shoot the breeze. It doesn't matter to me.
I did want to add one thing, I think, for the
Yeah.
people listening, that get caught up in what people say is what you're supposed to do, and how that is very damaging, I think, to us, especially in society today. We're not limited like we were in the past. So the idea of, if you don't stay with the company for 10 years, you're not loyal. If you're not doing it a certain way that I did it, it's not right. And I think that's where some of the older workers in these companies get kind of lost, and why they lose really good people is because they believe people have to do things they did the way in the past. But we don't have unions as much anymore. You're not getting corporate pensions that you retire on. And that's why people stayed for so long, right? They stayed because after 20 years they could retire with a pension from the company. That's not the same anymore.
Yeah.
So now it's really about working somewhere, getting the most value that you can get, take the most tools that you can get. But if you feel yourself stuck, or you feel yourself not growing, or bored, or whatever it may be, it's okay to leave and try to find another venture, which is why it's important to build out your own brand and your own skills. But don't worry about those things that people say that you shouldn't do. What works best for you? Try it. Don't get pigeonholed by old beliefs that don't necessarily have to be true anymore.
Well said, Doc. Dan, I got a question for you.
Yeah,
I'm always fascinated by decision making, and the really interesting thing is, in business and entrepreneurship, the more the business grows, the more complex the decisions become, and the more challenging they are. So, are there a couple key decisions you felt like you've had to make over the years that you can really attribute to, hey, this was the right call, and I was able to grow and expand because of it?
Yeah, and each one carried with it a certain amount of risk.
Of course.
As it does, decision making does in a business. There's always risk associated with it, and it just seems like, I just feel very blessed to have people in my life, personally and professionally, who just have a lot of wisdom, and even people close to me, like, you mentioned your dad, and I would say the same thing. My dad's actually a pastor, but he spent a few years as an entrepreneur, having a home renovation business that he was very successful with. And so I've looked to him a lot for, bits of advice in terms of entrepreneurship and decision making and things like that. And then other people that are more in my industry. And one of the big ones was, do I go out full time with this venture, or do I just keep it as a side gig? My previous life, I was a teacher, and there was an opportunity for a new full-time teaching job, teaching high school AP biology, which is what I'm trained for. I love biology. I love nature, as you guys have probably seen on my social media. And so there was this, that happened 4 months into my business. I got that job offer. So there was this question of, the business is just starting to take off. It's got a good trajectory, but it's not there yet. Do I take the full-time job and have that kind of steady pay and just work on the business on the side? Or do I just, continue to dive in head first with the business and really, latch on to that trajectory and take it, as far as it can go? And, just talking to people, getting some advice about that. And one of the things my dad said was, teaching is not just a 9-to-5 job. It's your home, and you're grading papers, and you're making lesson plans, and maybe the school wants you to be involved in coaching. And there's all of the things that go along with teaching that's going to make it very difficult for you to focus on growing a business. and being available to, do the photos for business professionals. And unfortunately, it's such a shame that in a lot of cases teachers are paid so poorly. And my wife was pregnant at the time, very sick during the pregnancy. She wasn't able to work. So it was, and plus once the baby came, she wanted to be home full time. So I was like, well, there might be a steady paycheck there, but it's not going to be enough to pay the bills once my wife comes home full time. So my dad was just said, you know what, the business is going in a good direction. We've seen from your mentor the potential that's there. This isn't just a kind of pie in the sky dream, but you've seen people actually having success with this in a different market. So I think you need to go and pursue this. And that was one of the critical early on decisions of this. We're going to do this full time, and we're going to pour 110% into it. And it took a couple more months, but man, it took off, as you've seen. And so that was one. And then the next one was the decision: do we get into a studio space?
Yes.
Because obviously that's a big overhead expense that adds more risk, financial risk to the business. But it was getting to a point where it was basically, we're getting busy enough that we just can't keep having people into our living room, as you guys did at the beginning. Thank you for your graciousness with that. I think we tried to make it very nice for people. We had cookies.
We had cookies.
Yeah.
Homemade cookies.
Yeah.
They were still warm out of the oven. I was disappointed when we came into the studio today and we did not have our cookies.
The smell was not wafting through the studio.
So you just need us a cookie candle.
Right, that's right. Yeah, go to Bed Bath & Beyond or something. So it was, okay, are we willing to take on the financial risk and the overhead of a studio? Is it going to be worth it? Again, talking to mentors, my dad and others, and we basically decided if we can use the space to generate more revenue than we did originally, then it would totally be worth it. And so that's, we started looking, and at the same time started planning how can we use the space to generate more revenue. And that's exactly what we've done with expanding from beyond just headshots to more personal branding and lifestyle type of images for our clients who've got a lot of social media needs for images. They're doing a lot of public speaking. They've got podcasts, and they're wanting beyond just the classic headshots to get other types of branding images. So we've been able to do that here in the studio, as well as starting to shoot video for our clients and doing LinkedIn intro videos and other types of videos for people. So it's like you've got to weigh the risk of, there's risk there, but there actually might be even greater reward if you can be consistent and follow through with building on that. So that's just some examples of some risk taking and the payoff.
I think it makes a lot of sense, going back to what we were saying too about more than one thing can be true. I don't know if either one of those is a wrong or right decision, right? It's really feeling. Now, if we paid our teachers appropriately, that might have been a tougher decision, right? Like, so if they double, triple that pay, then you would think about it a little differently. But because they don't, it's easier to see the reward side on taking the risk.
Yeah.
This is where I encourage people, again, there is no right or wrong. It's weighing it for yourself. Are you like Dan, where you can put in that energy? Are you going to put in that 110% truthfully, that you can do that to make things work? Or are you not that kind of person, which is nothing wrong with?
Yeah.
It's just then, okay, you lean towards a different decision, but be realistic with yourself on knowing and actually taking a look at that risk versus reward and see if it is a good ratio for you to do. And most times or not, when you bet on yourself, you do well.
Yeah.
I have one last question.
Yeah.
I'm curious about for you. A little personal. I hope you don't mind. You brought up your dad a couple times and how he's mentored you, and you've got young kids. Going through this experience, growing a business, if you had one lesson you'd want your kids to be able to draw from what you're doing, what would it be?
Honestly, I mean, there's so many lessons. So many. One of the first one that comes to mind is don't be afraid to step outside your comfort zone. So many of the successes that I've seen in my business have come when I have decided I need to step outside my comfort zone to do this, and I've done it, and the success just abounded from that. And sometimes we might say, I definitely see it in my kids, and I'm sure others do as well, kind of well, it's too hard, so I'm just going to give up. And so trying to instill this mindset of, well, if it's hard, it still might be worth doing, so let's see, is there a way that you can figure it out, or ask for help or things like that, and try to encourage this mentality of, instead of just it's hard so I give up, well, but what's the reward at the end of it? Is the reward worth it? And if it is, well, then let's figure out how to push through that obstacle, so that we can get to that reward. And it's everyday little things. Took my kids to the playground the other day. There was a climbing wall. My oldest is 9, very adventurous, and was trying to climb the wall, and he got about 2/3 of the way up and jumped down and said, "Dad, it's too hard." And I said, "Wouldn't it be cool if you made it to the top?" And he's like, "Yeah." And I was like, "Well, let's try it again. Let's see if we can figure out, a better route for you to go up the wall, or just a different way to position yourself, or what you can do to get there." And we did that, and it took him a couple of tries, but he made it. He got to the top, and he was like, "That's amazing." So just trying to, I think, instill that, and try, it's work ethic, it's mindset, and just, not being quick to give up. Just wanting to instill those things into my kids, and just kind of see where they run with it.
Yeah. One thing I love that you mentioned, and I think a lot of times, and we're all guilty of this, myself included, a lot of times the idea of the discomfort stops us from doing something, and that idea of the discomfort is a lot worse than the actual discomfort itself. You actually get into doing something, you stretch outside of that comfort zone and say, this isn't as bad as I thought it was. I just made it up in my mind as something greater than it actually was. And that is a challenge that I've dealt with myself, and I do believe most people work through at some point, or fail to work through, but it stops them from achieving what they could otherwise achieve.
Yeah.
So a little secret, there's no such thing as a comfort zone. Just like there's no such thing as an introvert, extrovert. It's just a habit we've kind of created, right? Yeah. So we created this place, and most of the times we say we're in our comfort zone. It's just another safety net for us to say as a reason why I don't have to do something to challenge myself. Or, again, I'm just so used to doing it. Because when you say these things, like even talking about your son in that case of climbing, it's not really comfortable for him to stop at the middle of the wall. It would be much more comfortable for him to be at the top of the wall. But we say these things like comfort zone so that we okay if we don't do it.
Right.
And it kind of gives us that safety valve of backing away. But truthfully, most of those things, when we do challenge it, are actually more comfortable. Think about diet, exercise, nutrition, all those things that we say, oh, we don't do it because we're in our comfort zone, challenging ourselves in business. It's really, once we push past that, we'd be a lot more comfortable. I'd be comfortable with more money. I'd be comfortable being more healthy, like not, running out of breath walking upstairs. That's actually more comfortable. But we say those things and we label, and that's why I'm not a big fan of those labels, is because we make them something more than they are. And that same thing with comfort zone. It's really just a habit. I'm just doing that over and over again, so I'm used to it.
Yeah. What would you say to this? I don't know if you've heard this quote before, but I saw it somewhere. Someone said, you're either going to experience the pain of discipline or the pain of regret. And they had that mounted in their gym as kind of motivation. And what would you say to that kind of applied to business?
Well, there's always more than one result, right? And
right.
Sometimes both of those things. So it's not an either or again, it's a both,
right?
You're gonna feel some pain, and you're gonna feel some pain of doing it and not doing it. I love those motivational things because they sound really great in there, but it really just comes back to a lot of the core stuff of what do you want to do? What's stopping you? We were working with someone recently, one of the people we coach, and I think one of the best compliments we got, I don't even know if you've heard this one yet, when they were talking about working with us to somebody else, they said, we hear things in totally different ways in the same kind of conversation. So when JB's telling me something, he's coming at it from like a sales business aspect, and then Doc's like, okay, why do you feel that way? Like, what's preventing you from doing that? And neither of those things are great advice on their own, but when you put them together, it just adds that more value. And that's how she was saying. She's like, I like both of what they were saying, but once I heard them both together and it made sense to me, I realized it wasn't either or in a lot of these things. It was and. So I don't know if that answers the question. I just went off on a tirade. Sometimes do that. But I think just what it goes back to is I think is we think so black and white a lot of times, and we really want to live in that gray a lot more.
How can people find out more about JB and the Doctor?
Well, talking about social media platforms, we happen to be active on 1, 2, 3, all of them for the most part. We have a team that helps us keep our visibility high. So jbandthedoctor.com, at jbandthedoctor. You can find out all about us, what we offer, our different verticals. We have our own podcast that we've had for over 3 years, the Entrepreneur Mastery Lab, which is thriving and continuing to grow, which is awesome, and we really enjoyed doing that. So whether you want to get in touch with us directly or you want to just hear some of our thoughts on all sorts of topics that you can deal with in entrepreneurship, you're going to find us out there.
We also host events all over town. We've got some workshops coming up. So we're always doing something. We host our own networking at least quarterly. So there's always something going on, and we love also just to meet and hang out for some coffee, happy hour, whichever one you catch of us at, both. So always reach out to us, and
Around town being Fort Lauderdale.
Yes.
If anybody's listening from elsewhere.
Well, JB's Tri-County.
Yeah,
Right?
you could say from Coral Gables, Homestead, all the way north to Palm Beach.
Yeah.
We're around.
Yeah, awesome.
And they have a Brightline thing now, so it's not as bad to get there.
Yeah, absolutely. Fantastic. Thank you guys so much for coming in today.
Which they should now sponsor the discussion, right?
What's that?
Brightline should now just sponsor
Oh, absolutely.
the
They
discussion.
should. Yeah, we're selling tickets right now. Flying out the door. Thanks for coming in, guys.
Dan, thanks for having us.
Yeah,
Pleasure.
absolutely.